Good evening. I am your moderator for the second half of the forum tonight, and my name is Cislina Grosser-Ledbetter. Tonight's forum is for candidates for Whatcom County Sheriff. There are two candidates on the ballot for this race, and I would like to introduce candidates Doug Chadwick and Donnell Tanksley.
Hello.
Hello. Whatcom County Sheriff, as the only elected law enforcement officer, the sheriff is the chief executive officer and conservator of peace of the county and accountable directly to the people. Some of the primary functions of the sheriff's office are to provide law enforcement services to all citizens of Whatcom County, to support and work cooperatively with municipal, state, tribal, and federal law enforcement agencies in protecting the public, to operate the Whatcom County correction system, and to advocate for improvements and efficiencies in criminal justice, mental health, and public safety systems. The sheriff serves a 4-year nonpartisan term. We will follow specific rules for the debate. There will be no opening statements. Instead, the introductory question is tailored to elicit responses consistent with opening statements. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question and will make a 1-minute closing statement. The order of questions and closing statements was decided by coin toss earlier this evening. Each candidate has a challenge card. Do you have them? Well, all right. Candidates may use this card to challenge or rebut their opponent's response. The challenging candidate will have 30 seconds to state the challenge, and his opponent will have 30 seconds to respond to the challenge. Each candidate may use their challenge card just one time. Timers Michelle Kopcha and Judy Hopkinson will be tracking the time. Their timers will flash a yellow sign when 15 seconds remain, and a red signal when the time is up. Stop sign. Okay. If a candidate continues, the bell will be rung to signal stop talking. We ask the candidates to be respectful of the time allotted due to the limited amount of time that we will have and our desire to include as many questions as possible. I'd like to remind the audience to hold their applause until the conclusion of the forum. We encourage members of the audience to provide written questions for the candidates. These questions will be asked of both candidates. Ushers are available to pick up your questions and bring them to the screeners to the table on my right. Ushers? There we go. Questions will be screened by League members Mindere Amanran and Robin Barker. There you go. They will be screening for legibility and clarity and to avoid duplication. To begin, candidate Doug Chadwick will go first, and after, we will rotate with candidate responses we will rotate which candidate responds to questions first, and candidate Donnell Tanksley will lead the closing statements. So with those rules, let's get started. Timers, are you ready? All right. So at this time, I'm going to invite the audience to start submitting questions. Candidates, you will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each of your questions. And the first question is, and this will go to Mr. Chadwick. Okay. What specific actions will you prioritize during your first 90 days in office to address crime?
Well, good evening. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum to educate voters about the race of sheriff. My name is Doug Chadwick. I'm a lifelong resident. I'm the current undersheriff. I'm a 29-year veteran of the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office. As a resident and law enforcement professional, I care deeply about my community, and I'm committed to keeping Whatcom County safe. During the first 90 days, I would focus on initiatives that bring our community together. I would focus on establishing town halls so that we can listen to what the community has to say. It's important that we hear from you because at the end of the day, Sheriff is accountable and responsive to the citizens of Whatcom County. I would form a sheriff's advisory committee and get representatives from the various groups in Whatcom County to listen to different perspectives and different voices based on their experiences. I would also implement a community relations academy, similar to the Citizens Academy, where we would host citizens from throughout Whatcom County and educate them, one, on what the sheriff's office does, but two, how we can better work with our communities, especially our marginalized communities throughout Whatcom County. And we'll do this by working together to find the balance between grace and accountability. Thank you.
And thank you. I'm Donnell Tanksley. I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. I did 21 years with one of the largest police departments in the country, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police, about the 38th largest police department in the country. I'm the only candidate who has led a law enforcement agency, and I do understand that law enforcement does have the power and the influence to shape our communities. In addition, I did 22 years in the military and a lifelong member of the American Legion. Also, along the way, have attained a master's and a bachelor's degree in management. In terms of crime, what we need to do first is really have a proactive, intelligence-led data campaign to make sure that we are working together with all the communities and the agencies within Whatcom County. I know the sheriff's office does have a crime analyst. The city of Bellingham right now is looking for a crime analyst, a crime analysis person. I think clearly that as a county that we need to look at this as a holistic view versus then just unincorporated Whatcom County and invite all the cities together to have a deterrent with crime. Also, the jail initiative, it's clear that we do need a new jail, but that's only one part of being in the community.
Thank you. The second question, we're going to start with you, Donnell Tanksley. What specific initiatives would you implement to address mental and behavioral health and substance use disorders and their relationship to crime?
Sure. Well, certainly one of the first things that I would do is talk to our partners and other stakeholders to create a 40-hour crisis intervention certification course for law enforcement officers here in Whatcom County. Today, if we have to send an officer or a deputy for the certification course, we have to send them to King County, Thurston County, Pierce County, and oftentimes Spokane County. We have the opportunity here today to create a 40-hour certification course. By the way, those certification courses are under the umbrella of the Sheriff's Department within those jurisdictions. In addition to that, we also have to focus on the mental health of our children and our children that are in schools. I was in Everson, and there's a new juvenile intake center there. So that's the first of its kind in Whatcom County, but we need that in other parts of Whatcom County as well. So those are just a few of the things that I would do. In addition to that, I did get a chance to ride along with the Opportunity Council Homeless Outreach Team and spent 4 hours with them just going from camp to camp. It's a lot more that we could do. It's a serious issue here, and I look forward to doing it.
Would you like for me to repeat it?
Sure. If you could repeat the question.
All righty. What initiatives would you implement to address mental and behavioral health and substance use disorders and their relationship to crime?
Well, fortunately, the Sheriff's Office has already taken steps to address that issue. The Sheriff's Office is the only law enforcement agency in Whatcom County that has a behavioral health deputy program. We currently have 2 deputies that are assigned to address calls specific to persons in crisis related to mental health and substance use disorders. We're also piloting and working with our health department to fund and staff a co-responder program. There would have behavioral health specialists would ride with our behavioral health deputies or any patrol deputy for that matter and respond in tandem and arrive on scene together to provide services where people are. So you have somebody there to address the immediate safety concerns, but you also have a behavioral health specialist that can triage and address those in crisis and best determine what services they need immediately, as opposed to waiting a day, a week, a month to get them the services that they need. I would also continue to look at our diversion programs for people that are involved in mental health or substance use crisis. Currently, our deputies, in lieu of arrest, can take people to our Crisis Stabilization Center, also known as the Ann Deacon Center for Hope. And we also have opportunities to refer them to the LEAD program, which is law enforcement assisted diversion, and hopefully divert them away from the criminal justice system and get them the services that they desperately need.
We have a challenge, our first challenge. Donnell Tanksley.
Yes, I want to make it clear that having 2 deputies that are specialized in behavioral health is not enough. Every single deputy needs to be a specialist in behavioral health. Then I would also like to add that the co-responder program that my opponent talked about, they've been trying to get that off the ground for a couple years now. And the way I understand it, that it's actually defunct right now, and it's not happening. So if there's other information that he might want to add to that, I would love to hear it.
Absolutely. The co-responder was a program that we put in for funding with the health department and articulated our desire to have behavioral health specialists respond in the field where people are with our deputies. It took the health department longer than was anticipated to hire those people. We finally had 2 behavioral health specialists assigned, and as we were getting the program going, they diverted them and took those 2 positions and assigned them to the alternative response team in Bellingham, leaving the people of Whatcom County without that service.
Okay, so the next question is for you. If a new jail is approved, it will be about 5 years before it's operational. What specific plans would you have to manage the inmate population in the interim?
Well, the current jail is inadequate. It doesn't have the space to hold people accountable, nor does it have the space to provide programs to help people rehabilitate and integrate back into society. So we have to look at a way to, 1, reduce the impact and the number of people in our jail. So that's diversion programs such as LEAD, GRACE, the co-responder program. But we also need to look at other programs that would, we need to look at other ways to lower the population of our jail so that we continue to protect the public. I would look at contracting with other jails. We've done that in the past, but unfortunately, many jails throughout Washington State are suffering the same staffing challenges that we do here in Whatcom County. I would also look at potentially building a temporary facility to help with that capacity issue, maybe some lower level offenders. And right adjacent to that, I would have a homeless navigation center so that when people are released, a navigator, there is that warm handoff so that they go directly to a place where there is temporary housing, there is services for both mental health and substance use disorder, maybe some help with finding housing, job placement, vocational skills, and other community-based services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. So I think one of the first things that we need to do is really talk to our legislators about the competency restoration that was mentioned earlier. I have a good relationship with them. In fact, I'm endorsed by every single state representative in the 40th and 42nd. But in addition to that, we need to figure out what happened to our current jail. Why is it in the condition that it's in now? So we need to some extent, address those issues. But I do understand that it's going to take funding. It's going to take staffing as well. So I'll work with the county council and other stakeholders to see how we could mitigate the mold that's been there, to see how we could do a thorough cleaning, to possibly, break out a few gallons of paint, increase lighting. Access control has been an issue. We spent tens of thousands of dollars over the years on this particular jail. My opponent just talked about building a temporary facility. We've already did that. That's built on Division Street. So I don't think that's a solution. So we have to figure out what we could do, what we have right now until a new jail could be built, if it's built.
Thank you. All right, next question starts with you, Donnell Tanksley. The Sheriff's Department employees often face high levels of stress, mental health, behavioral health, conflict, and danger. What, if any, new programs would you implement to help your employees manage these pressures?
Sure. So I believe employee wellness is very important, is near and dear to my heart. As the chief of police in Blaine, just recently in 2022, I secured over $50,000 in funds from the Criminal Justice Training Commission for officer wellness, which provided 10 sessions, 5 sessions for each officer of confidential counseling. It also provided a year of gym memberships and in-person services. Most recently, I just secured $30,000 from the Criminal Justice Training Commission for Officer Wellness to increase those confidential counseling sessions and to have a in-station fitness wellness center. But every employee is a valued employee. I think it's important that we talk to each and every employee to see what their goals are, to see what opportunities they've been given, to see what's their outlook. Certainly, I could tell you that as a leader of 2 different police agencies, that I know there is value in talking to each employee. So we have to make sure that they're valued. We have to make sure each time that they have a performance evaluation that we talk about their goals and how we could help them with professional development. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Chadwick, do you need me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay.
As far as officer safety and wellness goes and addressing the stress, I've seen a change in the paradigm shift when it comes to law enforcement and recognizing the trauma that our officers experience. They see things they can't unsee, they hear things they can't unhear, and they smell things they can't unsmell. And they take that home with them to their families, and over time, it's cumulative, and we've seen the impacts over and over again. So over the last couple of years, I put a emphasis on officer wellness and safety. The first thing I would do is look at increasing staffing to take away to the impact of workload. Our deputies are working overtime in the jail, they're working overtime on patrol to provide a high level of service, but it takes a toll on them. We implemented the Cortico Wellness app. It gives them access to resources, peer support, chaplains, talks about anxiety, depression, gives them a point of contact, suicide lines, all those kind of things at their fingertips. We went away from the group counseling session, and now when somebody's involved in a traumatic incident, we offer a one-on-one counseling session at no cost to the deputy or officer so that they can speak with somebody about what they've experienced and get individualized care. And I think it's important, again, I'm happy to see that the stigma of mental health and law enforcement is going away and that officers are getting the help that they need.
All right, so the next question, we start with you, Doug Chadwick, and I'm gonna integrate a question from the audience. Maybe I'll give you a softball. How about that? What is the difference between the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department?
Well, as far as the sheriff's office, sheriff is an elected position. It's nonpartisan, and we represent all citizens of Whatcom County. Primarily, the sheriff is responsible for countywide law enforcement, corrections, and emergency management services to include search and rescue. When it comes to law enforcement services, the sheriff is primarily responsible for unincorporated Whatcom County. So that is the areas outside the city limits of, say, Bellingham, Ferndale, the rural communities of Whatcom County. Each municipality has their own police department, as they do in Blaine. As far as corrections, we have countywide jurisdiction. We operate 2 correctional facilities, and any jurisdiction within Whatcom County, whether it's the sheriff's office, the Bellingham Police Department, or the Lummi Nation, for example, they bring their arrestees to us, and we are responsible through our correction bureau for housing them and taking care of them and keeping them safe. So that includes medical care, mental health care. We have medically assisted treatment programs for those that are suffering with substance use disorders. And then finally, we have emergency management responsibility to help all the jurisdictions. Bellingham has their own emergency management, but we help all jurisdictions with planning and mitigation and recovery efforts when there is a disaster. And finally, Whatcom County is over 2,500 square miles. It is larger than the state of Delaware, and that is the jurisdiction that the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office is responsible for and provides services for.
Anything to add to that?
Yes, I'll add just a few more things that, in addition to what he said, that unincorporated Whatcom County is also about 85,000 citizens here in Whatcom County. Right now, the population, 85,000 people in unincorporated Whatcom County. The total population of Whatcom County is about 235,000. So unincorporated Whatcom County doesn't really, population-wise, reach about a third of the entire population of all the cities combined. But also it's important that as the sheriff, is and has been a willing partner to other agencies. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. All right, so the next question, we'll start with you, Donnell Tanksley. Over the past few years, new laws in Washington have changed how law enforcement officers can do their jobs. Do you think these have had a positive or negative effect on protecting the public?
Sure, and thanks for that question. So I would say yes and no. Some of the laws certainly had an effect to protect the public. I will say that the pursuit law, when it was changed a few years ago, did limit law enforcement to capture people that committed certain crimes, and it also had an effect on our community. For example, at the time of that law, if someone had entered your house and stole all your things, and you watched that person walk out and put those things in a car, and you point it to the police and say, hey, that's that person driving away, the police can only try to stop those folks. But if they drove off, it was nothing that we could do. But that's been changed. So I do believe that the police accountability laws does help the public. I support most of those laws, with the exception of the pursuit law, which was changed. As a law enforcement professional and as a person of color that has been traumatized at an early age by law enforcement, I understand that we do need accountability, we do need transparency, and we do need to have a just law enforcement and criminal justice system. And I think that's something that we can all agree upon.
Thank you, Tanksley, Donnell Tanksley.
Yeah, thank you.
So would you like for me to repeat the question?
No.
No?
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
As far as the 2021 legislation, I agree. There were both positives and negatives that came out of that legislation. I think when it came to mental health treatment and what we're doing for members of our community, I think it provided funding and direction for how we help people to have a better life. It also provided and directed law enforcement to have additional mental health training, which I think is a good thing. Law enforcement, we're not necessarily law enforcement or mental health professionals, but we need to have a good understanding and be able to work with the mental health system and the community-based services. When it comes to the Blake decision and the drug laws, as far as drug possession, that has created a lot of issues in our community. We certainly should help those that suffer with substance use disorders, but we also need to hold people accountable. And right now, we have people in our community that are continuing to commit crimes, and a lot of it is driven by that drug addiction. So they're not held accountable, but they're also not getting directed to the services like drug court that help them and become the catalyst for going down the road of recovery. And the same thing can be said about arrest and incarceration. For a lot of people, incarceration is a point of intervention, and it's that catalyst to get them to the next point. And then finally, the pursuit laws. They limited law enforcement's ability to apprehend criminals, and it has emboldened the criminal element, and we see it every day. We just had 2 cars intentionally rammed just this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug Chadwick. All right, so the next question, we're going to start with you. This is another question from the audience. There are 5,000 to 10,000 outstanding warrants in Whatcom County. What is your plan to help people be accountable and work through the backlogs? Yes,
first?
you're first.
I agree. The backlog, and a lot of it is because of COVID. The court shut down, and we already had a backlog of warrants, and it just exacerbated that problem. So we need to look at what has been done several times before between the courts, the prosecutor, and the public defender. They can bring people in that want their warrants quashed. If it's a low-level crime, they quash the warrant, and it no longer exists. We also need to increase capacity so that those people that don't show up for court, oftentimes we'll arrest somebody, do a book and release on warrants. They're issued a new court date. They don't show because there's no accountability, and it goes to a warrant again. So we need to be able to have space in the jail to hold people accountable, especially if they're not going to show up for court on multiple occasions. Get the prosecutors and the public defenders to work jointly and expedite the process through the courts to get these people in front of a judge and resolve the issue.
Thank you.
So I certainly agree with most of what my opponent said. But, you know, also, in order to get people to come in from for the warrants that they have, I think we need to try to figure out as a community how we can have a trusted source contact some of those folks. I certainly know that if you call the person and say, hey, there's a warrant and we've been having this warrant for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, they're probably not going to come in. So how do we figure out how to get that person in through a trusted source? But we also should use technology as well. If that person has a valid phone number, we should also expend some funds trying to send people out, with a law enforcement officer to try to make that apprehension. But also, there is a need to have a warrant reduction call-in program to where you could have it not necessarily at a government center, but it could be at a church, it could be at a school. I've seen cities that have people come in after work, after 5. You can't have these things in the middle of the day sometimes. So there are some things that we could do that are out of the box, but I think we have to be able to be willing to take a chance.
Thank you, Donnell Tanksley. You are next up for this question. This is another audience question, and I'm going to combine them. They combine them into this one question, and it has to do with staffing. Several key individuals holding leadership roles in the Sheriff's Department will be retiring this year. How would you plan to maintain operations and continue a high level of service to the community with those retirements happening?
That's a really good question. And 20 years ago, Whatcom County elected a new sheriff, Sheriff Bill Elfo. And in fact, Sheriff Elfo, he was the chief of police of Blaine prior to being elected. And when he came to the sheriff's office, he actually hired an undersheriff from outside the agency. So these challenges have been met before. So what I'll do is, if elected, if it's the will of the people, take a look at people that are planning to leave, take a look at people that are within the organization. I talked about opportunities earlier. Look at people that might want to have an opportunity. Hey, by the way, I'll take a look at people that are really talented that probably just didn't have that opportunity during this administration or past administrations. So there's some things that we could do. Also, I'm going to do a staffing study, if elected, for the whole Sheriff's Department, not just patrol. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Do you need me to repeat that, or we
No.
good? Okay.
You're absolutely correct. We have almost 50% of our command staff is set to retire at the sheriff's office this year. That's well over 100 years of institutional knowledge and experience that is walking out the door, not because they want to leave, but because they've served their community for, some of them, over 45 years. The sheriff has been there for over 50 years, 20 years as our sheriff. So significant law enforcement experience is already walking out the door. I'm able to, with 29 years of experience, I am able to immediately move into that role from day one and I still have that institutional knowledge, and I can help our internal candidates. We've got great people on our command staff that are willing to step up and move up in those leadership positions, and I can help them because I've been in those positions. I've been the chief criminal deputy. I've been the undersheriff, and I can help the next because I understand their job and what's necessary. So in addition to the internal applicants, I have relationships throughout Whatcom County and other counties as well with high-level law enforcement executives that would be happy to come here and work as part of my team here at the sheriff's office. I've had those conversations, and they are willing to come here if I'm elected sheriff. At the end of the day, you can't replicate the experience that I have, the knowledge that I have. You can't train that. You can't replicate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so you are next up for the next question. Another audience question. What will you do to address the crime that is escalating around homelessness or those that are unhoused encampments in the county? What would you do to address crime that is escalating around homelessness encampments?
In the county?
In the county, yes.
Okay. Obviously, when we listen to people, when I'm out talking to people, public safety, homelessness, drugs are top of their list as far as what their concerns are. Homelessness is not a crime, but some of the people that are homeless do commit crimes, and they need to be held accountable. A lot of that, we see a lot of our homeless population suffers from severe mental health issues and significant substance use disorders, specifically fentanyl addiction. It's not just here in Whatcom County or Washington State, it's nationwide, and it's something that we have to address immediately. I would increase, the sheriff's office is responsible for the Whatcom Gang and Drug Task Force. Currently, the sheriff's office is the only law enforcement agency in the county that assigns personnel or has anyone assigned to that unit. We have 3 investigators and a sergeant. So we need other agencies to participate and help us with the problem. We have to address the drug issue. It's killing our youth. It's killing countless people each and every day. And then if we want to address crime, we want to address homelessness, we want to address mental health, we first have to impact and we have to address the significant drug issue we have here in Whatcom County.
Thank you.
Sure. So when you're talking about a homeless encampment, and I don't think that you could separate crime from someone that is experiencing substance use disorder, or someone that is experiencing mental health issues, or someone that just is down on their luck and doesn't have any of those co-occurring things and they're homeless. But I also believe that you have to tackle that from a 3-point perspective and look at all those different things. Treatment services. How many veterans do we have in these encampments? I'm a veteran. That means a lot to me. Affordable housing might be an issue. Even if we go there and we deter the crime, how can we get people into housing? Apprenticeship opportunities. I've been talking to labor unions. I would like to start some pre-apprenticeship programs or be supportive of those pre-apprenticeship programs. Employment and training. These are all issues, and having living wage jobs, these are all issues that oftentimes contribute to homelessness, which oftentimes homelessness might contribute to crime, and that also might contribute to substance use disorders. I'll also like to end that I volunteer at the Civic Field Overnight Shelter. So I've seen the trauma that people are going through. So in order to understand it, you have to go look at it and live it. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, the next question is for you, Donnell Tanksley, and that is kind of a long question, so track. Some residents were dissatisfied with the Sheriff's Office emergency response during the Nooksack flood in 2021. For example, the CERT volunteers trained in emergency response were not activated. The county website wasn't regularly updated, and residents had to rely on community groups for information. In anticipation of continued climate-related events, what changes will you make to improve the Sheriff's Department's emergency response?
Well, first, I would just like to thank every citizen in Whatcom County and from other places that responded and helped. So I know that there's a lot of heroes out there. I appreciate that. So while in the military, I responded to Hurricane Katrina with the Air National Guard. I've seen devastation. Spent 22 years in the military. I'm used to preparing. I've prepared for war. I've deployed twice after a global event. But we have to really prioritize our comprehensive training programs for our first responders and for our communities. We have to upgrade technology and the equipment that we have. I know the Sheriff's Department just bought some equipment from a grant they received. But it's good that we have that, but the fact of the matter is that the Sheriff's Office was not ready for it. We have to establish and strengthen partnerships. In fact, that slow response was a direct responsibility of my opponent. He's in charge of the Department of Emergency Management for the Sheriff's Department. So we have to have leadership. We have to hear people. We have to fix them. We have to give people what they deserve, and I think I'm the person to do it. Hey, by the way, there's a lot of people that don't live in the cities in Whatcom County. They live in unincorporated Whatcom County. We have to be there for them. They deserve it, and I'll certainly make sure that we're prepared next time.
Well, as far as the November 2021 floods, that was an unprecedented flood. That was a 100-year flood. It was not something that anyone predicted. I'm endorsed by all the mayors of all those cities. They are not upset with the sheriff's office for our response. They're frustrated with the federal government and the state government for how long it took them to provide funding and services to help them. The sheriff's office did exactly what our first responders are supposed to do. They tried to rescue as many people that drove into the water and got stranded as they could, but they're in cars very similar to the cars that people were driving that got stranded. So the community that I'm from is a lifelong resident and very proud of the North County. They did what they do. They got tractors, they drove through that water, and they saved their neighbors, their friends, and their family members. And that's exactly what this community does. They help each other in times of need. When we sat down and we looked at the floods, we looked at what can we do better. So I immediately went to work with our county council and the executive to get additional funding. Since that time, we've added an emergency operations center manager. We've added a financial accountant to help with the grant, the federal funding that's coming through to try and expedite that process. And we've added a community communication specialist. The response was what we had available, and we've added to that. We've added swiftwater boats. The communication could have been better, and we've taken steps to improve the software for notification systems, sirens to alert people. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to start with you, Doug Chadwick. Another two-part question. In what ways do you think implicit bias affects the work of law enforcement? And what, if any, plans do you have in addition to current initiatives to address implicit bias?
Great question. I am actually a fair and impartial policing instructor. Incidentally, my opponent and I went through the same class and have co-taught fair and impartial policing, and that includes implicit bias training, and it includes procedural justice, police legitimacy on how we improve public trust. As far as what I would do to address implicit bias, that's human nature. It's the unconscious bias. It's what we all do, and it's based on our experiences. So in order to have reduce that implicit bias, we have to understand it, and we have to base our decisions on the facts, not stereotypes, not our biases. Facts and information is what we take action on. And that's the goal of implicit bias training. We've provided that training. We're continuing to provide fair and impartial policing training to our deputies. I also teach a community relations class at Whatcom Community College that specifically addresses community relations, implicit bias, procedural justice, all those things that we talk about. And that's how we maintain public trust, because we can't do the job of law enforcement unless the public we serve trusts us. And in order to reduce biases, we have to have better relationships, and that means getting out of your comfort zone and having conversations and interactions with people that you may not normally associate with on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question from the top?
This is a two-part question. In what ways do you think implicit bias affects the work of law enforcement? What, if any, plans do you have in addition to the current initiatives to address implicit bias?
Sure. So my opponent is correct that he and I both were trained and taught fair and impartial policing. I believe that was 2015 or so. I've continued to teach fair and impartial policing. I've continued to be certified. You have to be certified every 2 years. It's my understanding, and he could correct me if I'm wrong with his challenge card, that the sheriff's office hadn't taught fair and impartial policing since the day he and I taught it. So at least that's the information that I have. So, implicit bias, and it really starts from the top. It's about culture. It's about culture of the police department. So you have to have it from the top. You have to have buy-in all the way down, especially at your supervisory ranks that's on the road, that's teaching new police officers. So you have to have buy-in from the top. In fact, I'll tell you that in December of 2022, I taught 3 different courses to Skagit County Corrections of fair and impartial policing. So I've taught all the way down the I-5 corridor. This is important to me. And one of the things I think we could do is really buy in to and appreciate the fact that we're going to have a Whatcom County Racial Equity Commission, and I was part of that stakeholders group, and they're going to take a look and evaluate some data around systemic racism. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question, challenge. All right, here we go.
As far as fair and impartial policing, we have continued to provide fair and impartial policing at the Sheriff's Office. I believe we're doing it again this month. We also incorporate it into our Citizens Academy so that they understand the training that our deputies go through. But fair and impartial policing is not a new concept. Fair and impartial policing is the basis of law enforcement. It's no different. Case law, Terry versus Ohio, Graham versus Connor, objective reasonableness is very similar to fair and impartial policing. It's how we do our job and treat people with dignity and respect.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to start with you, Donnell Tanksley, on this next question. How will you work with the tribes to better support efforts around missing and endangered indigenous women?
Sure. So I am a member not of the standing committee, but I'm a member of the subcommittee for law enforcement officials throughout the state. So we meet every 2 weeks or so via Zoom to see what other police departments and offices within those different counties are doing. For me, the first thing would be is to have a meeting with the 2 tribes that we have here in Whatcom County, Nooksack and Lummi. I am proud to say that I am endorsed by both those tribes. So I believe is, really just sitting down at the table to see what more that we could do collectively as a community to make sure that we're doing as much as we can. But also, there's bulletins that are sent out anytime a county in Washington State has a missing or endangered indigenous person. So we really can use social media as a tool for that, which we do at the Blaine Police Department. So again, just sitting down at the table and by the way, making sure that they have a spot at the table continuously, not just when in an emergency. Sorry about that. Yeah.
As far as how I would go about that, as he said, there's similar to the Amber Alert program, we can do alerts when there are missing indigenous women, similar to silver alerts and other things like that. It's through the Washington State Patrol. I was actually the chair of the North Puget Sound Amber Alert Committee that refined those processes. And over the years, we've added these alerts for missing indigenous women, silver alerts, other people in crisis. When it comes to working with the tribes, I have a long history. I'm endorsed by the former police chief of Lummi Nation, Ralph Long, a very good friend of mine that I work very closely with. And we have always worked with them to address criminal activity and help people on both the Lummi Nation as well as members of the Nooksack tribe. I went to Mount Baker High School. A lot of those Nooksack tribal members were my friends, my classmates, my teammates. My daughter is actually dating a member of the tribal community. So I have regular interactions, not just at work, but personal interactions. I understand the culture. I understand their concerns, and I would continue to work on that to address any missing persons within either ones of our local tribes.
Great, thank you. The next question, we're going to start with you, Doug Chadwick. Tell us about a controversial management decision you had to make in the past that you knew was going to negatively impact some or all of your employees. How did you communicate that decision, and how did you respond to any fallout?
I guess what comes to mind is anytime we have employee issues, part of being a law enforcement, part of being accountable is we have to hold each other accountable. The public expects that, so that when we have a member of our department that is accused of a crime or accused of misconduct, we take that very seriously. We recently had an incident with a brand new hire, fresh out of the academy. He'd been through the background investigation and everything looked good. No issues were reported to us. We contract with background investigators, polygraph investigators to include a psychological examination. Shortly thereafter, we got information that that person was suspected of committing crimes. We immediately took action, looked into it, put that person on administrative leave, and terminated that person. Not only did we report that to the organization, because again, that's somebody that was a body on the road that potentially was going to improve officer safety because it improves staffing. But we would much rather hire overtime than have the wrong people serving the citizens of Whatcom County. The other thing we did is we were very public about that with the media and the public so that they knew that we took immediate action to address those concerns.
Okay.
Sure. So I'll just tell you about a situation in St. Louis when I was a lieutenant. So as a lieutenant in St. Louis, I had 6 sergeants and about 38 officers under my command, and that's just on one shift and one platoon. I had a probationary police officer that was off duty with some other officers, and they had a bit too much to drink, and they were involved in a shooting. And my officer was shot by another on-duty police officer. Very hard situation. And I was there for my officer, and there every day at the hospital with the officer and the officer's parents. And during the investigation, it showed that he had multiple policy violations. And but I was there for him, and eventually I had to deliver the news to he and his family, and to my officers as well, that he was going to be terminated. Sometimes these are the hard decisions that we have to make, and I made that decision. Well, I gave him the information. It was the decision of the chief of police, but I supported that decision. So sometimes you have to make the hard calls, but you still have to support them as well.
Thank you. So the next question is for you. This will be, Mr. Tanksley, this will be the last question before closing statement. Under what circumstances should the sheriff's office work with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection, so ICE and CBP? Under what circumstances should the sheriff's office work with those two offices?
Sure. So there is a state law called Keep Washington Working, and that state law does prohibit local and municipal and state law enforcement agencies from assisting federal agencies with immigration-related activities. However, we do work with our federal agencies, sometimes with criminal investigations that's not related to any immigration. Certainly up in Blaine, for example, if we do need a federal partner to assist us on a regular call for service, they are instructed clearly about what we can and cannot do. And then we also have body cameras. And then that information is also annotated in our police incident reports. So it's clear to what we can and cannot do. But also our federal partners, they assist us with emergency situations with regard to national disasters and things of that nature. So I think we need to keep those relationships, but be very clear to what we can and cannot do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
No water.
That's okay. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay.
As far as working with immigration, Customs and Border Protection, the Sheriff's Office has a long history. Being a border county on an international border, all the federal agencies are here and we work with them on a regular basis. But don't misunderstand, the Sheriff's Office and general authority law enforcement officers do not have immigration authority to enforce immigration law. We work with those agencies to enforce and address criminal activity that comes across the border related to trafficking of guns, trafficking of drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl. The precursors for these drugs are coming and going across that border. A lot of it is run by gangs on both sides of the line. There's also human trafficking that is on the rise, both in Canada and here in Washington State, that we work with our Homeland Security investigations. Again, we have deputies assigned with both the DEA and Homeland Security investigations to work on criminal activity that impacts communities here in Whatcom County. We also rely on those federal agencies when there's an incident at a school. When there's an active shooter incident, they show up. They are trained. They are equipped with the resources to address that immediately so that innocent lives are not lost when time is of the essence. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. We have made it through all the questions.
All right.
Y'all survived. All right. And so now, candidates, you have the opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement. And we will start with you, Doug Chadwick.
Well, again, thank you to the League of Women Voters and to you, the voters of Whatcom County. Whatcom County is the only home I've ever known. I'm invested in making our community better and committed to keeping it safe for your family, for my family, and for future generations. I have a vision for Whatcom County, and that involves close collaboration between the Sheriff's Office and the citizens we serve. Together, we will reduce crime and increase public safety for all. Together, we will build and design a modern jail that best meets the needs of our correction staff, our offenders, and the community. Together, we will reduce the amount of dangerous drugs, such as fentanyl, coming into our community and hold those that profit off addiction accountable for their actions. I humbly ask for your vote and would be honored to serve as your next sheriff. My name is Doug Chadwick, and together we will work for a safer tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm the only candidate, again, that has led a law enforcement agency. I bring a wide breadth of experience and a fresh perspective to the Sheriff's Office. Blaine, as I said earlier, has a history with the Sheriff's Office. Again, our current Sheriff, Bill Elfo, he was the Chief of Police in Blaine for about 6 years prior to being elected as Sheriff. I spent the last 37 years serving my country and local communities as a military veteran and a professional law enforcement officer. Public service is my passion. Just public service is my passion. I've been focused on reducing crime through proactive, community-focused approach and breaking the cycle of incarceration and recidivism. I've said it before, we cannot wrest our way out of this situation. We should have a balance of accountability, treatment, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Thank you. I appreciate the league. And if you want more information, go to tankforsheriff.com. And thanks for coming.
Thank you. So, Doug Chadwick, Donnell Tanksley, thank you both for being here tonight and sharing your thoughts and ideas. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I thank the candidates for being here today and for their interest in running for public office. Voters can find more information about the candidates online at vote411.org and in your voter pamphlet. Ballots will be mailed October 18th, 2023. Your ballot must be postmarked or in a ballot drop box before 8 p.m. on November 7th, 2023. Please remember to sign the ballot envelope. And if mailing by postal service, we recommend mailing early. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, candidates. Good night.
Thank you.